everyone. Welcome to our session, Tactical Diplomacy, a serious discussion with our speaker, Dr. Pham. We're hosted by Excel National, which consists of Excel Phoenix, Vegas, San Jose, Arizona State, Southern California, and U of A chapter. My name is Kim Ho. I am with Excel. I'm on the board. I've been with Excel for about 5 to 6 years now, and also my day job is a corporate development officer with Phoenix Children's Hospital. So Excel is shaped around the concept of learning by leading. Since our beginning, we've sought to provide community members with opportunities to hone their leadership skills and cultural awareness through organized experiences. This includes dragon boat teams, volunteer events with various nonprofits, and our annual Dynamics of Leadership conference. So in line with our vision of a world where everyone has the skills and opportunity to lead, events such as our fall Proving Ground, basically a chance to forge leaders of tomorrow through professional development, cultural awareness, community service, and mentorship. So we want to continue this mission through this event tonight. Tonight, we're going to talk about productive disagreement that requires a delicate balance between honesty and empathy for others. Professionals experience challenges in how to find the best approach to express our voices effectively. This session develops and expands your ability to understand and be understood in an impactful manner. So I would very much excited to introduce Dr. Pham. A little bit about him before he starts. He, as the chair of Elevate, he works with dozens of organizations from the Fortune 500 to government and nonprofit agencies. The Elevate program boosts organizational performance and strategic effectiveness through interactive training and data-driven research. His work has been featured on national and international multimedia venues such as CNN, MSNBC, Associated Press, Fortune, Voice of America, the LA Times, Asian Week, and Radio Free Asia. He's given keynote speeches on numerous occasions and presented at many conferences internationally, and has written for both academic and mainstream publications. Beyond his professional work, he's participated in generating over $1 million to nonprofit groups and donates many hours to them. That is incredible, Dr. Pham. So the intro description of what we'll be talking about today is the ability to enhance your ability to leverage different opinions and personalities to present your best message. This session is going to provide context on risk mitigation and development of strategic approaches to voice your opinion in a positive and powerful way. I'm very excited to learn more about this. We will be doing a Q&A. If you do have any questions before I turn it over to him, please go ahead and type it in the comment field, either about him, Excel, and let's go ahead and welcome Dr. Pham.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks for that warm introduction, Kim. And just want to confirm you can see my screen, Kim?
I can see it.
All right, thank you. Well, so before I get started, as I'm talking, I want to make everyone interactive, actually. So can you all thank Excel in your chat boxes? So we're going to do a couple of interactive components here. As some of you have seen me present in real life, I'm very interactive. And how does this work out virtually? Well, it works with you still. So please thank Excel in the chat box. We'll get to see it. We'll get to see who thanks, and we want to show gratitude, right? So the best way is we're all dedicating time here. Please thank Excel. They do such wonderful work, and I've known people with Excel for years, so it's so exciting that this is my first presentation with Excel, even though I've known the founders for quite a while now, some of them, I think, over a decade now. So please take the time, thank Excel, and let's be interactive. This will be a good test. So as you're all expressing your gratitude in the chat box, what I want to start to look at is then the context. As Kim mentioned, today more than ever, disagreement is much more important to talk about. Look at now, right? Just walk out on streets of major cities. There are major protests going on, and there's flat out conflict. We are able to have Twitter revolutions as of a few years ago, right? I mean, that social media can create revolutions with the Arab Spring in different countries, overthrow entire governments. So we need more tactical diplomacy. And if you think about the workplace, it means more there as well. So all of this is critical and important. So the best part of diplomacy is start with gratitude first, because it opens doors. And if you actually think about it, it's counterintuitive, which is, what do diplomats do all day? They sit, a good diplomat, if they're successful, they're actually on camera having tea. They're actually, when you're thinking, what, diplomats sit and talk all day and drink tea and eat meals? That means they're successful because they're not negotiating war. They're actually sitting face to face, and they're actually able to have tea, which is actually the opposite of war, which is trade, right? And mutual partnership, commerce versus conflict. So that is diplomacy at its best. Diplomacy at its worst is when the diplomat actually has to go in and defuse a war, right? Or a pending war. And why is this important for Asian Americans? I want you to think about this. With Asian Americans, that we are actually historically are great at conflict, but here's the conflict in and of itself. It's a cultural conflict, right? That we actually are in the US, we are considered low context, which means that people are very direct. We say what we mean here in the US. In Asia, we are high context, which means someone could say something, but you don't know what they really mean. So now this conflict happens culturally. I don't mean by war, I mean by within ourselves and how we communicate with our bosses, our peers, when we disagree. So from war to commerce, right? All the way down to how we disagree, how we have conflict. So commerce to conflict, it cascades all the way down. And if you navigate that well, you're an excellent diplomat. So what I want to do is start to present some research here. And first of all, kids who talk back actually become more successful adults. All right. So research shows this. It's longitudinal. It tracks over time. And when you look at research, then we need to think about research in terms of talking back. All right. So what does that mean? It means disagreeing. And when our kids only nod and say yes, well, guess what they become? Yes, people over time. Yes, we do want kids who fall in line, all that. But if they're beyond disciplined and actually what we'll call overly compliant, then they won't break rules. So I want you to think how this ties in with probably most of you who are here. My guess is the vast majority of you are Asian, although you don't have to be. But why has the US done so well is because of continued immigration, right? And I'm a refugee, so it's migration as well of refugees, not just immigrants, but migration. And if you look at it psychographically, we are a land of migrants, whether European, from Africa, from Asia, wherever it is, that these are inherently risk takers. We are likely the ones to talk back. And that's why we came here. We are inherently profile-wise more rebellious. That's why the US constantly has intermingling with immigration combined with risk-taking, combined with people more likely to talk back who don't agree with their home countries as much. It doesn't mean we're at war with their home countries. What it means is we're not overly compliant. Whereas if you look a lot of the home countries, so look at our founding fathers, a lot were European American. If you go to Western Europe, actually, Western Europe has had a stagnating economy, stagnating faster than we have here in the US. That's because the risk takers have moved from Europe here. The same with Asians, right? Asian Americans, we index higher as risk takers and higher as entrepreneurs than the average US population. So we proportionally have more entrepreneurs amongst Asian Americans than we do the general US population. But I want you to look at it. We are much more likely to inherit our risk takers because we migrated here. The ones who are less risk taking are more likely to stay at home. It doesn't mean people don't take risk at home in our home Asian countries. It means we index higher here. And even if you're third, fourth, fifth generation American or Asian American, you still keep a little bit more risk taking. So this is tracked with actually kids. So when you take listening and when you take that seriously, that's really important. Okay. All right. And so, I see someone added a comment that, oh, now I need to give my toddlers credit for not listening. Yes. All right. You give a little bit of credit for them. And by the way, for full disclosure, I may have an Ivy League PhD. Full disclosure, I failed kindergarten. So I want to tell you this. I failed kindergarten because I ditched class and my grandma would shoo away the bus driver. The first couple days I was sincerely sick. I actually ditched school 23 school days in a row. So actually over 1 month. In the state of California, you technically failed kindergarten. So I failed not because I wasn't smart. I failed because I wasn't compliant. If anything, I outsmarted the system. My parents never knew I was ditching school for a month. My grandma knew, right? And she let it happen. I helped her company. And guess what? In the end, it worked out well because my mom talked the school district into saying, hey, you know what? Mike, do you want to deal with my son for another year of him ditching class? And of course, he said no. So they passed me. They let me move on to first grade. I got to spend an entire month at home eating grandma's cooking, learning by watching TV, playing in the backyard. And here I am. You can still get an Ivy League PhD, but even then, that doesn't matter, right? It's what you do to bend rules. So guess what? I broke the rules, but the district bent the rules and let me pass. So in the end, I want you to think it wasn't as deliberate. I didn't think about the mega consequences, but I want you to think talking back and failing. So I'm going to give you a second piece of data, bonus data, not in this deck. Second piece of data. Kids who actually fail more often younger also are correlated with more highly successful adults. That's why if you actually think about it, there's a higher correlation with, those who actually take risks and fail early. That's why young entrepreneurs usually outdo older entrepreneurs over time. Although the reality is, just to give you, the average age of an entrepreneur is actually about 42 to 44 years old. Even a high-tech entrepreneur is about 40 years old. The high-tech startup, when you see Mark Zuckerberg at 24 becoming a billionaire, and he started before 24, the reason he's all over the news is he's a statistical anomaly, right? But on average, high-tech startup entrepreneurs about 40, and all entrepreneurs, if you look at all business startups across the board, roughly, depending what you look at, around mid-40s, so about 42 to 44. So actually, the more risk you take as kids, that's a safe space for you to fail, screw up, and who do you have to take up the slack? Your parents. So those of you who said go ahead and take credit, absolutely. Yep. And thank you, John. You put they're poised for success and they have a safety net, which is you, the Asian parents, right? Or other parents. So that's a bonus piece of data. All right. So why are kids more successful? Now, some of you started answering it. See, that's great. You did not wait for me. You're actually already, I don't want to say talking back. You're talking during my presentation by putting in the chat box, which I love, by the way. So I don't view that as negative. I'm actually acknowledging you. I view that as positive. I'm not the be all and end all. Between all of you as collective wisdom, you're smarter than me, hands down. So what I want to do is answer in the chat box when you put group 1. So in your chat, if you put group 1 : then answer that question. How does talking back support success, right? So if you want to answer that, group 1 : and I want to hear from everyone. All right. This is the beauty of being Asian American too. We are strong at collectivism. If there's a lot of people on the call, we're going to get a lot more responses. All right. And then if you could put group 2 : and then give your answer to the second question. How does talking back hinder success? So there are times where talking back can hurt your success as well. So I'm not saying it's unilaterally good to talk back. I have gotten many a spanking talking back. So short-term success, if you call my bottom being redder and in pain and sore for the next 3 days, that's not success short-term. Long-term pays off. I could dish kindergarten, technically fail kindergarten, but not be held back. So the system worked in my favor as well. And then it led to more success and risk-taking. But it made me, a little bit more savvy at risk-taking, maybe a more compliant, but also still take some risk. So as we're going through this, can you put that up? All right. So put group 1 : and then answer that question, group 2 : and answer the next question, just so we know which answers you have. So for example, group 2, someone put, so thank you, Angela. It said the people in charge can get angry at risk takers and punish them. Absolutely. Right. I mean, look, we're Asian American now. Look at Hong Kong, right? I don't know where you are politically, but if we live in a democracy like the US, Hong Kong has their democracy removed. That was not supposed to happen until 2042, right? One party, two systems until 2042. That shifted. And now with the new security law, you can't push back in Hong Kong so much anymore, right? And what happens then? We'll see, right? But on the flip side, China's COVID response was actually pretty good because they were very draconian, right? Here in the US, we pushed back to have our freedom. Well, that led to more spread of COVID. In China, they were highly command and control. It stopped COVID a little bit faster. It depends. Where then you have free democracies like South Korea, where, hey, democracy and collectivism doesn't have to be hardline control, and they can actually contain COVID. Vietnam is draconian, did it, but let's take democracies. Taiwan, South Korea, and and Singapore, right, are good cases, as New Zealand too. So it's not all Asian as well. So if you look at it, you know, I see another answer for group 2 is it's preventing harm and punishment. Group 1 could be also, for example, it could support success because it allows you to push boundaries. You can't push toward more success and grow better than your ancestors if you don't know what beyond the guardrails looks like. So in other words, group 1, to be more successful, you need to know what beyond the horizon looks like, right? We all need to sail beyond and not look at the world as flat. And maybe, you know, you didn't fall off the world and that's it. So group 1, that is part of what it is, testing boundaries, doing things that are unknown, which leads to innovation, doing things that have not been done, you know, not saying we've always done it that way. And so both are valuable, and that's what is going to lead to tactical diplomacy. All right. And so if you look at more data, then here's the reality. 50% of workers have left a job to escape a bad manager, because the manager usually is draconian, saying you can't do this, all this. I mean, let's be honest, sometimes they're bad employees too, right? A lot of times I would say this, they're, you know, employees fire themselves. What does that mean? We could want to escape, or we deserve to be fired. But either way, there is a lot of that going on. Okay. And then, you know, so what we need to do is this cross-pollination helps prevent groupthink, right? So what if you put as group 1, why do we resist and you know, and talk back? Well, it prevents groupthink. If we all did the same thing and thought the same as groupthink, there's a value in collectivism, but there's also a negative in groupthink. So thank you for really putting that. And sometimes we need to quote unquote escape. This is not moving from one job to another. This is maybe starting your own business as well. And maybe this is moving from one country to another, like I said, with migration. So if you correlate it at the national, international level, the multi-organizational level, where you're moving from one company to the next, and even if you're in one company, the same company, and you move from one department to the next, you learn, right? If you're in HR, you move to finance, then move to sales. You build multiple skill sets, and you actually become, guess what? The CEO, next thing you know. So CEOs are very multifaceted. So let's not just use the word escape. That's what the survey did. Let's use migration. We migrate across departments. We migrate across organizations. We migrate across companies. And by the way, just another piece of data, within the US marketplace, those who leave jobs with an average of 5 years, you move from company to company, by the end of your career, you earn 50% more than those who stay in the same company. So I'm not saying leave your company. What I'm saying is that's correlated with making more money. Now, remember, there's more risk, right? When you move to a new company, you lose social capital. So you might lose some of that, those relationships with which then you have to become more diplomatic, right? More tactical diplomacy, because you've traded what? Financial capital, right? You're making more money by leaving a company, but you've sacrificed social capital. So that means you're actually sacrificing relationships, networks, right? Goodwill and trust. So when you look at it that way, you also need to look, then it's not about leaving your manager. It could be communicating more with your manager, actually, and turning the other way instead of away from your manager towards your manager, and having stronger, meaningful communications that are 3 times as engaged. Look, I talk politics with my staff all the time. And you're thinking, well, you do? Yes, I don't fire them over disagreements. And now we're talking more than ever, right? We are talking George Floyd. We are talking, we are an organization that does leadership development. We do diverse leadership development. I work with business schools, right? So Mirage School of Business at UC Irvine, Rady School of Management at UC San Diego. And we work with the government and private sector. And I want you to think about this. We engage. We don't retract from this debate. We have to listen, even if we disagree, even if they disagree, but we voice meaningful conversations that a lot of managers are actually, quite frankly, afraid of this. You look at India, they teach multiple religions in grade school, you know, and what does that say? It increases religious tolerance. They do not preach multiple religions, they teach multiple religions. So preaching and teaching are not the same thing, okay? You should be learning multiple perspectives. And so if you look here, then the engaged employees have 17% higher productivity. So, you know, if you think about it, don't just calculate your salary. Let's say you make $100,000 a year plus benefits, right? So at 17% increase, that's not 17,000 plus benefits. So that's, you know, 20+%, let's say that $100,000 salary. Remember, you have to earn at least two to 5x your salary to be profitable for the company, right? At a private sector, government, you're not making direct profit, but you can measure that still in return. You know, the government doesn't pocket the profit as profit; they pocket it as additional investment in services. But either way, whether you're government or private corporate sector, if you increase your productivity, let's say counting benefits over 20%, multiply that by 3 to 50 or 100, even depending on what level you are. If you're CEO, you're worth at least 50, 100 times what they pay you. If you're an average employee, typically about 3 times. So if at this $100,000 salary, you're increasing with benefits about 20%, so that's 20,000 times at least 3. The more you engage you are, you make, give or take, about $60,000 more in productivity for your company. And if you're a management level, that multiply that by another factor of 5 to 20. If you're an executive level, again, that number gets multiplied by, you know, potentially hundreds, right? So I want you to think, the more we can increase the productivity, the more powerful it is. All right. And then engaged employees are 21% more profitable. So not only are you generating more productivity revenue, I only use the revenue numbers, each dollar you take, so whether it's 3x or 300x more in revenue or investable services if you're government, it's 21% more profitable. So each dollar you take in increases in profit margin, right? So it's pretty powerful, okay? So we disclose our numbers with our employees. We are very open with discussing, because it's honest, hard conversations that a lot of managers avoid. We don't avoid it. We actually actively volunteer a lot of the information. So we're not going to form into groups here. Instead, we're going to use the chat box. So can you think of ways, you know, so if a manager has an idea that would do more harm than good, how would you push back against your own boss, your own manager, in a polite way? So we're going to give you, you know, a couple minutes as you're doing that. So if you could type in just simple strategies into the chat box. And again, folks, Excel is really helping you by donating and investing this time. Please donate back and invest, because the more you give back in the chat box, the more you're honoring everything they do, right? By being engaged. And we just talked about employee engagement in the last couple of slides, right? The more you engage here, the better and richer this presentation becomes. You're helping me, you're helping them, you're helping one another. So how can you push back, all right? Yes, so thank you. I see Kathleen, you said having more opinions, right? And suggestions is more options. Absolutely, okay. Okay, and then let's see, I see Faye here. Okay, I will ask my boss, help me understand, right? So it gives them a chance to respond. Absolutely. It's not saying you're wrong. So I want you to think, you've probably heard people say this, whether personally or professionally, when they say you're wrong or I disagree. Well, think about what that really does. Immediately, it makes the other person pause and say, wait, and they get in defense mode, because you're just immediately making a judgment by saying they are wrong or you disagree. So what it does is, very subconsciously, and it might be very conscious, they get highly emotionally charged and they think that you are attacking them. That is our fight or flight response. It is also pushback. And as you know, people stop thinking as logically, you included as well. So they start to escalate it, you escalate it, then that's when debates become, you know, basically flat out disagreements, become flat out nasty, you know, shouting matches, become potentially wars. If you're a diplomat and you take that tone, well, guess what? Thousands, if not millions, could die from a simple discussion, and they have, right? That's usually how wars start. There's usually two world leaders who disagree with one another, yet they happen to have command of, you know, literally tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, or 1 million plus troops, right? Which we do in the US, by the way. So helping you to understand, and also asking clarification. Yep, we're seeing a lot of that. And then leading questions. So thank you, Dale, for saying that. Dale Ting, that is Socratic method, right? Not every question is a neutral question. And I'm not saying you have to be neutral, by the way. You can embed assumptions, okay? So absolutely. All right. So here's the data on this. Be disagreeable, folks. Disagree does not mean being a jerk. Disagreeable does not mean being rude. Disagreeable does not at all mean that you have to constantly push in a negative way. What disagreeing means is not doing sometimes, and holding the line, right? And that could be disagreeable too. So it's not always about that. Up to 18% more. Now, I hate to say this, it is gendered. For women, it's roughly about half to a third that much. So it's sad that we have these stereotypes against women, that when a woman disagrees, we think she's being, the B word, right? Or just aggressive, right? Whereas men, we are told we can disagree more. That's historical. It still exists today. But I will say even a woman who is more disagreeable earns more than a woman who's agreeable. As a matter of fact, when you're talking heterosexual relationships, I'll throw out a different study, which is that when a woman smiles at a heterosexual male, he thinks she's flirting with him. Okay, but when other women view women flirting, smiling, they don't view it as flirting, they view it as friendliness. So there are just different interpretations. So it's not fair for women. It's harder for you to be disagreeable, and it's even hard for you to just smile and be friendly. You get misinterpreted by men who are heterosexual, who think you're flirting with them, right? But in general, being disagreeable helps both men and women. It does help men more, but it's correlated with earnings. So being disagreeable does not mean being a jerk. Be very, very clear about that. I am disagreeable when I try to be. Sometimes I wish I were more disagreeable, right? And I wish I would have pushed back. But overall, your goal is to be disagreeable, right? Okay. And I love some of your comments here. Okay. So someone put with your boss, let me think about it and I will get back to you. That's not agreeing, right? That's actually questioning and looking at things. And so that could be disagreeable as well. Okay. Just not in an overt way. All right. So how do we push back against an unpredictable personality? And there are processes and systems. It doesn't always work. There's no one size fits all, but we're going to talk a little bit about that, right? Give you a process. We have a tool called the pushback translator. It's a way to translate pushback in a systematic way. Helps you to work in awareness in a smooth way, right? And again, engage in tactical diplomacy. Really think about it in terms of better communication, increased ability to understand one another in the situation. So it's not to decrease, it's not just a pushback to push, right? It's to ask questions, understand, all right? And so here's what it is. It's 4 key components. One is you want to agree honestly up front. You need to have that, right? So there are different ways to approach it, different schools of thought. So for example, Kim Scott, she used to be an executive over at Google. She actually, has her mentor, Sheryl Sandberg at Facebook, and Kim uses a concept called radical candor. You need to be open and candid, right? But in a radical way. Her example was she was walking with Sheryl Sandberg and Sheryl said, oh yeah, hey, and put very nicely, you should be careful not to say so many ums. And Kim kind of said, okay. And then said, but I do this and this. And Sheryl said it again. And Kim said, yep, I got you. Da, da, da. And Sheryl finally had to just stop Kim and say, Kim, I'm going to stop you here. When you say too many times, it makes you look stupid. And that's when Kim listened. Sheryl was not insulting Kim. Sheryl was taking a risk. You can always risk the friendship and relationship. Carol was not insulting Kim. Carol was giving her radical candor and feedback. The worst thing that can happen sometimes is if you smile and say everything's great when it's not great. And as Asian Americans, we are taught, as Asians, right, we are taught to not rock the boat, engage in harmony. Many Asian cultures, not all Asian cultures, but many, we are low conflict, right? So the key is sometimes you must have radical candor. It is not a bad thing. It is to be direct, because remember, we do live in the US and we have multiple cultures and perspectives. We are still, a lot of companies are still built on traditionally male and traditionally white, right? European types of communication patterns, which tend to be more individualistic than Asians. I'm not just using this race-based. What I'm saying is these are cultural communication patterns that to this day exist, right? Across nations and cultures. Well, we are a nation of immigrants, we mix. So how do you do that? Step 1, be upfront. And I tell my team, please disagree with me or offer alternatives when needed. And I tell people when my team disagrees with me, usually about 80% of the time they're correct. Why? Because they're mainly going to feel so strongly to disagree that because I'm saying something that'll probably take us off course. all right? So when they're disagreeing with me, I listen more intently and seriously. I don't worry about getting offended. I mean, sometimes, when you're younger, you do, and you still feel like, oh my gosh, you're going to prove me wrong. Of course, but they are going to prove you wrong, but that will make it right for everybody. So I want you to remember that and jot that down, right? When they prove you wrong, it might be more right for all of us. So it might be you who's wrong, but all of us get the right answer. All right. And that's the power of all this. Okay. And then next is discuss intent before content. Okay. What does it mean by this? I'll add, assume positive intent. There are very few people who just assume negative intent. And even if they assume negative intent to you, in their minds, they think they're doing it for positive reasons. So I'm going to say something, I don't think it's that controversial. Let's try to not dismiss Nazis as evil. They committed acts that are atrocious and vile. But if you read a book by Hannah Arendt, okay, the subtitle of that is The Banality of Evil. What it means is Hannah Arendt is a Jew. She's a very well respected, I mean, she's passed away, but a Jewish author. She was in the concentration camps herself. She said, let's not call Nazis evil. What that assumes is there is something true, evil, and good. All right. There are people who do atrocious acts who are part of our own democracies. There are people who do good acts who have killed people, right? We are never in our lifetime unilaterally good or evil. We have all lied. We have all told the truth. All of us have, even a white lie. All a white lie to me is it's still a lie. It's just the word white just makes it a little bit more innocuous. That's all. It's a minor lie, right? But you never know. So what she said is this: when we stop calling all Nazis evil, when we start calling all the allies good, it allows us to have a more open dialogue. And that's what's happening today. We have Democrats and Republicans. If you look at it historically, I'm a historian by training, actually, even though I teach in the business school. If you look, the last 50 years, it's now we're becoming more of a two-party system, and it's winner take all. If you're a Democrat, if you're a Republican, and you say one thing, then you must automatically be party affiliated. If you look before the 1980s, we had much richer conversation. We could debate openly politically, and it was more issue by issue. Today, if you take a stance on an issue, people say you're a Democrat or Republican. Now, remember how the party shifts so much. Republicans were actually anti-slavery going into the Civil War. Democrats were actually pro-slavery. Today, it's flip-flop, right? A lot of people of color tend to, and white middle-class educated women tend to support Democrats. Republicans tend to be more men, more white, it is true, and also more rural. Democrats are more urban. And if you look at it, the parties shift. So if you say, oh, all Democrats are bad or all Republicans are bad, well, it depends which part in time, right? So don't castigate another party, or, as a lot of, variations of religious sayings have had this, right? Careful casting a stone in a glass house, right? We all live in this glass house. We're showing how fragile it is right now. So the key is assume positive intent. All right. So I say this because even Hitler had a girlfriend. Even Hitler, there's this beautiful painting that if you saw it, you're like, whoa, this is beautiful. And you say, what do you think about this artist? So then people start writing, oh, this artist must be great. Oh, see, beautiful, want to help the world, do nature. And you find out it was Hitler, and when Hitler was a young person before he became who you know him as today. And if we would have said, wow, at one point, you all can appreciate positive intent and art, okay? And that's how you can educate our kids, because if someone's good or evil, you execute them or you praise them, and they could never do good or bad again, right? So the goal is even a good person can commit a crime at some point in their lives, and even a convicted criminal can do something to prevent a crime and help someone. So intent is more positive than content. And let's assume positive intent, okay? And finally, show respect before doing all this. Actually, I had a Facebook exchange the other day, right? I mean, it's been a great dialogue. And can you believe I'm posting political posts on Facebook and even open with my political stance because I voted across party lines. I can comfortably say this. I have a lot of wonderful friends, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, because I talk to them. I look at this objectively because, again, are you a Democrat in the 1950s? I'm sorry, 1850s, then you'd be pro-slavery. Are you a Republican today? Well, you might be, much more for Donald Trump, who's fighting the Constitution, right? And so who are you? I'm not here to judge you in that way. I'm here to look at your actions. So we have respect. Well, I had a PhD friend, haven't talked to him in years in person. He was so disrespectful. He name calling. Well, I don't care what you think, this and that. And I said, hey, why are you doing this? I question all this, and he said, well, I have 25 years of ethnic studies experience, blah, blah. And by the way, I've studied that, and I said, I'm just asking for facts and evidence. Why are you stereotyping, conservative whites as all conservative whites? I said, is that not stereotyping? He said, well, I've got proof. I said, well, but that's still a stereotype. And look, I'm not white, but let's just be honest here. We should not cast stones, right? And I didn't say that. But in the end, you know what solved the debate? So I had a friend jump in saying, why are you being so hostile? I didn't ask that friend, he jumped in. But you know what who had the last word? And I will allow him the last word. I asked simple questions. I said, so let me ask you this. I was poor at some point. I took you into our house. You used to spend the night at my house. I used to take you in when you didn't have money, and I didn't have much money. And after all these years, I see this hostility. And I asked 3 simple questions. 1, would you treat a stranger who's your ally this way with such hostile language? 2, how would you treat those you disagree with? And 3, how is this respectful? No response afterwards, because there is no response. Number 3 is violated, people. And all he has to do is say, I apologize, or let me be respectful. I don't even need an apology. I just need respect. And it ended. You see, that's how you stop a dialogue in its tracks in a good way. And then all of a sudden, there are a few likes. There's, people private messaging me. And you know what? Through that, I made a friend that I didn't know him. He was on someone else's thread and saw this thread, and I was on that thread. He was just a mutual friend of a friend. I don't know where he is politically. He is a white man. He is a veteran, all this stuff. But we are having a wonderful dialogue and sharing articles. And then a couple others started writing articles. A gay white man jumped in and said, look, am I liberal? Am I conservative? I'm a gay white man who's grown up in a conservative suburb, but who's also lived in a multi-ethnic inner city area. I've done all that. Where do I fit? And I'd like to dialogue and learn, right? So we're complex. So when you assume positive intent, number 2, and number 3, you show that simple respect. And it sounds so easy, but it's not, folks. Okay. I have people who claim expertise with PhDs, and I tell them, look, I have a PhD. That does not make me right if I'm disrespectful. That it takes away someone else's right of being heard, listened, and whatnot. So rule number 3. And what do we mean by respect? I use a simple rule. Would you teach your 8-year-old that? And if you teach your 8-year-old that behavior, you teach your friends' 8-year-olds that behavior, you teach your own brothers and sisters if you don't have kids, your own nieces and nephews. If you would talk to your mother that way, if you talk to the 8-year-old that way, then are you respectful? If the answer is yes, totally respectful. So I'll check you, get that. I mean, it sounds so simple, respect. People use it all the time. The best example at a corporate level I'll give is Raytheon. Now that they just merged this year, by the way. So Raytheon was typically a Fortune 200, toward the top of the Fortune 200, right? A Fortune 102 to 105, typically 106. Very, very successful company. They just merged with United Technologies, another Fortune 500 as well. Now they're a Fortune 50 company. They're large, right? But about 15 years ago, Bill Swanson, he's now a retired executive CEO at Raytheon. He had something called the pillars of respect. I believe there were 5 or 6 pillars. And one day I just went and asked. I asked some, Raytheon employees, right? I asked middle managers all the way to individual contributors. I said, well, that's interesting. You have to have the 5 pillars of respect. Does that mean your organization is not respectful to one another? And a lot of them said, I'd say 90% of them said, no, we're very respectful, blah, blah, blah. I asked the executives, I asked several. Every single executive said, we are not respectful to one another. I said, wow, that takes courage. These are the people leading the company at the very top, all the way from CEO around. They said, no, we are respectful, but not enough. We could do better. And under Bill Swanson, if you look at the share price, if you look at profitability and growth, Raytheon had a golden age, and I hope that they continue to have that. But it takes courage, it takes respect, it takes courage, it takes integrity, it takes humility to say, wait a minute, maybe I'm not being as respectful as I can. So I want to show you an example of someone who even studies ethnic studies, studies Asian American. He himself is Asian, and I'm not here to flame him. That's why I'm not using names, but it was disrespectful to a lot of people on that. And he castigated, oh my gosh, and all you conservative Asians. And I was like, whoa, who are you talking to? You talking to me? You talking to others? We need to be respectful. So let's not assume that whites are any more or less respectful or Asians are any more or less respectful. Respect happens at the 5-year-old level. We teach them by 8 years old, respect. So I use my 8-year-old rule as one of our foundational principles, by the way, in my own company. In all of our teachings, I ask my employees and I explain to them, explain to me like an 8-year-old, I'll explain it to you like an 8-year-old, as long as we can keep it simple, but respect each other like 8-year-olds. If you're proud of teaching this to an 8-year-old, you win. All right. You win respect of others. You may not win the argument, but you win respect. So that's number 3. And finally, number 4, you need to ask and earn permission to disagree. All right. So you don't need to say, I disagree. Give an alternative. You're inherently not necessarily agreeing. That doesn't mean you disagree. All right. So if some of you put in the chat box, offer an alternative, that is not a disagreement, but it's not an agreement either. It's alternative. Now, if you want to disagree, say, I hope it's okay if I disagree here and give why, right? But if a person says you don't have permission to disagree, see, that's why number 4 is so important. Hey, I hope it's okay. I've got some alternatives, but I'd also like to disagree. Is that okay? And if they say, no, it's not okay to disagree, then you got to ask them, why can't I disagree? And if they will not allow you, there is a point where you do have to walk, right? If that's your boss and your boss literally just says you cannot agree, you walk at a certain point. You question it, give them a chance to explain why you can't disagree. Beyond that, you walk, because as many of you said here, if you cannot disagree, you will never have difference in opinion, diversity, innovation. You will become stagnant, have groupthink, have actual homogeneity, and you will die, because science shows that species that don't interbreed and intermingle die over time. They become extinct. They have birth defects in the short term, even in one generation, but multiple generations, they go extinct. Anyone who's a dog owner knows, pet owner of any kind, but dogs, you see it, multi-breeds out-survive purebreds, right? I know, because we rescue purebreds. We've got corgis. Our corgis all have medical problems. We know that, but we rescue them because they need homes too. And they're cute, we love them, but the reality is we pay thousands more in medical bills. My wife and I are prepared for that. We'd be better off adopting a mixed breed dog, because they will have fewer problems than the purebred. But everyone deserves to be adopted, right? Everyone deserves a life. So we've chosen our stance, that's all. But I'm telling you how powerful it is to ask for permission to disagree. And I want to really have that, because if you actually ask for permission to disagree, it empowers you, and it is asking your boss or whoever you're disagreeing with to empower others, including you, to disagree and have powerful dialogue. So I'm going to stop here. What I'd like to do is, as we're doing the Q&A, and you could do this anytime, but I'd like to, this is again to honor Excel, and and I would be very honored to hear what you think. If you could all write one thing that you've learned so far, and then we're going to go right into Q&A right now. So we're 1 minute away from Q&A. So hey, we're about a minute ahead of schedule. But as we're doing Q&A, can you write your questions there, or send it to the Excel people, and also write what you've learned so far. That would honor all of us. Okay, so go for it. I'm happy to answer any questions. And also, before we go into Q&A, if you can actually, I'm going to change my screen share, but if you want to go, I represent Asian Upward. It's part of Elevate. Elevate's a nonprofit, for-profit, and university. We work straight with the University of California Office of the President. I'm going to screen share so you see it, but But if you look at our website at Asian Upward, it's Asian Upward by Elevate. You can see my screen share now. So Kim, I guess can you see my website? Just want to make sure.
Yep, can see it.
Oh, thank you so much for confirming. You'll see it right on the homepage, actually, so you don't have to go to courses. We have a course coming up. It's a 2-part course. It's virtual, and you get it's a unique. It's not just traditional learning. It's interactive. There's small group classes, 50 or fewer people. Usually, the average class is about 20, 30 people from different companies. And this certificate's called People Systems. So Asian Pacific, influence, intercultural, right? And there's 2 classes. Each one are short. There's no homework. It's called Sphere of Influence, and you can see the dates here, and then Leverage. And there's more. You can click on that. By the way, I want to remind you of this. They're high end because you get a UC Irvine Mirage School Business Certificate. There's a very good chance if you work for a large company, I want you to remember this, they'll pay for this actually through tuition assistance, or maybe your manager will. But if you have tuition assistance, the beauty is that when you work with an accredited university like UCI, which is, as you know, in the top 1% of all universities, there's 5,000 plus universities in the country. UCI is consistently ranked in the top 50, which puts us at the top 1% of all universities. If you go and look at your tuition assistance policy, I believe many of your companies have it. Try to sign up using that. Then your manager probably doesn't have to pay a dime. It comes out of a pot of money, usually separately. And then secondly is the reason companies love working with accredited universities is they get a tax deduction for it. So it is an IRS tax write-off. So that's why if you work for a large company, there's a very good chance you have tuition assistance. They'll likely pay for this. I can't guarantee it, but try to sign up and then get it approved. Okay, and then you don't have to pay until 2 days before. So you can just hold your registration. And this would help us. We've launched this in smaller circles within certain companies privately. So this is our big, large public launch. Last year, we did a run. We've been teaching programs like this all the time, but we are finally going public with our partnership with UCI. So this is actually university approved. And here's the awesome thing you'll notice later. And when you click on, if you sign up as a student, you're going to get an assignment, a small one, to interview a senior executive. And then and you'll get to network with an executive from a major company. And then we credit everyone as a contributing author in the back. So then now you can not only get a UCI certificate, you actually get co-authorship credit you can put on your resume. It's more powerful. I mean, we'll do the authoring, of course, but you're going to contribute with interview content. So now you get to network more and be acknowledged, not with a certificate only, but with co-authorship credit. So it's called We Imagine, part of the We Imagine series, because we all imagine this together. So we're using our Asian intercultural effectiveness, collective wisdom, all this. And again, I hope you don't have to pay for it out of pocket. That's not what I want. If your large companies are willing, or mid-sized companies, nonprofits, if they're willing to cover it, they should have tuition assistance to pay for it. Use that first. Okay, so let's go on to the Q&A. Thank you, Excel, for reminding me about to post that. Are there any questions, Kim? And then I'll let you go ahead and moderate. If not, I'll take any questions. And thank you also for putting in a lot of your comments too. Yeah,
there are a lot of great comments and a lot of learning from what you just spoke about. I do actually have a quick question there, Pham. I feel like this was also helpful in terms of what we are literally going through right now with everything being so highly charged. I would say that there's so much emotion, and it's very personal for so many people on any movement. Do you have any sort of suggestions or tips of dealing with that extreme emotion that I think sometimes is even more difficult to then have a real dialogue, because there's so much personal emotion tied to how you're feeling when you're talking to somebody?
Absolutely. And this is why when it starts to get emotional, you can pull out the pushback translator or look at the steps, right? If you look at the steps there, you're saying, hey, can we assume we both have positive intent? Does that make sense? Whether you're Democrat, Republican, whether you're pro or con of something else, and you're asking, can we disagree? You're asking for permission. It shows that you're humble, you're open, whatnot. So actually, the pushback translator, it doesn't take out the emotions. It integrates the emotions into the discussion, because when someone says, don't take it personally, I'm like, you know what, we're people. And so the definition of people is to take things personally. You can't unless you're a robot. So short of that, yes, the pushback translator does account for that. Yeah, thank you for that question. Great question. And by the way, Kim, I'll just say this. Everything I mentioned as Asians and women, you're an Asian woman. People like you suffer double. So if you use this more,
Right.
this helps you even more, right? And know that you have an ally and an advocate in me. And us men, we need to help women. But we also, as Asians, need to help whites. Whites need to help us, et cetera. We need to help our Black brothers and sisters. We really need basic respect and intent. And this is the time to do it more, not less.
I completely agree. Let's see if there's some questions here. Um, looks like, how important is it to be disagreeable, but in a respectful way, if that's how you feel in a situation? Oh, it looks like that's what they've learned, but it also kind of coordinates to what we were talking about as well, which I like what you said is about infusing the emotion as opposed to taking it out of the situation. How are you finding companies? How important do you feel like companies are in making a stance right now on certain things and kind of integrating sort of what we haven't seen before is so much of our personal lives into like corporate structure?
Absolutely. Um, if you look, most corporations are taking an active stance. I'm going to give you two real cases. And there's tons. We work with tons of them. This happened back in Milwaukee. During the Ferguson, right, in St. Louis. A lot of Milwaukee is known as the most segregated large city in the country, right? It's not the South. It's more segregated in a different way. And when they had unrest and flat out rioting, whatnot. This is before George Floyd, by the way, years, back in 2015, 2016. Okay. The chief diversity officer, a good friend of mine, Puerto Rican man, Andres Gonzalez, he told, there are some companies saying we're not taking a stance. He told his CEO, who's a woman, he said, we are taking a stance. And she said, what do you recommend? He said, if we don't take a stance and we're silent, that is a stance. That's when we're saying it's okay. It's not okay. They open up a dialogue at their hospital, invited community members. This could have blown up. The community members were so thankful. They said, we want to work for you. They said, well, we got jobs available. They turned it from anger to open dialogue. They could have had destruction at their hospital. Actually, it became a recruiting opportunity. They got more talent, more productivity. And I'm sure, you can't correlate 100% with the business, but talent, they save money in talent. Look, instead of paying recruiters, they save a lot of money. So it's a bottom line business. They have goodwill in the community. You probably have more people wanting to go to their hospitals. Second example, American Airlines. I just got off the phone with them again today. They're our close partner. One, this is not even me, and I didn't even know this. I had to thank them. I was shocked they were doing this kind of work. My two airlines, I'm a platinum of American Airlines. This is before American approached us. I'm a loyalist to American Airlines. My secondary is Southwest. So it was interesting. I read this article on CNN on Southwest. It was a Black flight attendant. She saw this white man sitting in Southwest, right, reading this book, the book on white fragility, a white man, older man. And she started to have, hey, she said, do you like that? And they had a nice dialogue for that duration of the flight, right? It was a good, hour plus. And she found out later, it was Doug Parker, the CEO of American Airlines. So he was flying on a competitor airline, and Southwest is not at first class. They're all coach. So on coach, he has humility, reading white fragility, a white guy. No one knew. She didn't even know who he was until afterwards. He said, here's my card. She was like, oh my gosh, this is Doug Parker, the CEO of our competitor's airline. It got posted. I posted it. People were like, whoa. I called my friend, Anila Javanji, who's an Asian Indian woman. I talked to her again today, and I said, Anila, congratulations. Apparently, he was reading that before George Floyd. They were reading that before George Floyd with his exec team. That was on their reading list, by the way, before any of this, and all their executives were reading it. The CEO had to catch up, but this is before George Floyd, by the way. And then on top of that, I will tell you this. They're doing a listening tour now. 100 meetings in different business units with American, keeping it anonymous, where they are listening and just listening. That's it. Letting people air their grievances anonymously, but live. Powerful. And that's why they live their values. And I will always be loyal to American as long as they continue to do that. And even before I met anyone at American Airlines there. So yes.
That's super powerful. Thank you for sharing those examples and for your incredibly helpful presentation. Obviously, you had a lot of wonderful comments, and thank you for sharing that information on the class coming up. Obviously, you guys, if you have additional questions, please let us know, but we would like to invite you to our next Facebook Live event, which is also with Dr. Pham, and it will be a discussion on August 5th, which is on relationship stewardship. And it's really about the science of managing up relationships. So relationships, as we all know, and he spoke about today, are an important aspect of any workplace. But what if you have an unpredictable manager, which he's already given us a little bit of some helpful tips there. The personality affects every aspect of your day, from your productivity to your mental state. Develop your ability to be your own personal reaction coach. That's really cool. And in order to support more beneficial relationships for everyone. The section guides you through an internal process to shift towards smooth interpersonal interactions. And you can find out how to unlock your potential and gracefully navigate delicate social situations with self and others on this awareness on August 5th. So please mark your calendars for that. Very exciting. You don't want to miss that. And then on the next event after that is on August 13th. We'll have an event with Kalika Yap, who's a Filipino-American entrepreneur, founder and CEO and author. Join us in the conversation with her on understanding one's relationship with money, as well as tips and strategies to stabilize one's career and personal life during uncertain times, which is now. All of our events are posted on our Facebook fan page. Please click on that so you don't miss it and reserve your spot. And then we would be remiss to not mention, as part of Excel's mission, we put together classes of mentees every year in hopes of energizing the careers and skill sets of up and coming leaders. This is a help with experienced mentors. So we're launching our online mentoring program in the greater Phoenix area. We've in the past done this in person, but in current times, this is a really amazing way to get some additional support. It's a free program paid for by paid members with limited spots. You can build and adapt your skills in a constantly changing environment. The deadline for mentorship application is August 30th, so you have about a month. It's an 8-month program. If you're interested, if you have more questions, I've been a mentee and a mentor through this program. I highly, highly recommend it. It was life-changing for me. I still talk to my mentor today. This 8-month program also, you're only asked to meet with them a couple times, and it's all virtual. So I would definitely recommend it. That event is also available on our Fanbook fan page for more info. So want to keep you guys in the loop and involved with Excel. You're welcome to join us as a member. We have chapters in Phoenix, SoCal, San Jose, Las Vegas, as well as collegiate chapters at U of A and ASU. Process is super easy, and information on what membership can provide you can be found on our website. I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. We'd like to thank our volunteers, Jason Wong, in connecting us with our guest speaker, Amanda and Faye, our event managers, for the event planning. And thank you to Kathleen and Janine for running the technical aspects. Couldn't do it without you. Really another lovely thank you to our guest speaker. You were wonderful and joining us from California, and a corgi owner, and cares about having thoughtful conversations with everyone. So we have like a couple minutes, 2 minutes left. Dr. Pham, if you want to say any closing notes, and we can say goodnight to everybody.
Absolutely. Well, one of the questions I'll answer in 10 seconds, which is, someone said, how do you create disagreement? How do you deal with your boss? Psychological safety. It's correlated by Google with successful teams, and we need a safe environment. That's what it is, psychological safety, and that's what this is all about. You cannot have good diplomacy without safety, so stay safe.
Thank you so much, everyone. Appreciate everybody joining tonight, and look forward. Make sure you sign up for the next session for Dr. Pham as well. Take care.
Take care.